This Week in Economics on the 4th of August 2018. Our first program for the month of August. We're coming to you via the Bostonred Network and WBRN radio as we consolidate all of our broadcasts, and we recommend that you tune in to our various broadcasts. Numbers Man, that is our political broadcast. The Open Source Report, our technical broadcast spotlighting open source software and hardware. And our international program, BR on the World, Bostonred on the World. All of these programs can be found on the iHeart Network and the iHeart Media app at Stitcher. That's another network out there. TuneIn, Twitter. The YouTube is an audio version there. And we plan also this week to do a talk show over on the Blog Talk Network. It's part of the Speaker Empire, and we can also be found there and on their mobile app. So there are many ways to find us and our various broadcasts that have inner connectability. We'll use that word. That the economy is connected with the political action. And of course, when we talk about what's happening in Zimbabwe or whatever, that is a global economy, emerging nations there. So we look at that. We look at Brexit in the UK. We'll have some information on it, the latest information there from, and also the Bank of England raising interest rates. And where the Fed is standing here, they'll have a meeting in September where they will also raise interest rates. So we'll first look at the more important thing for working people and for workers, the paycheck scale we've incorporated in, and appreciative of the person that pointed us in that direction. Wage growth for Q2 is at a negative 0.9% over the year at 1.1%. And since 2006 at 12.9%. So that is what you have. And if we look at, let's see, trends by cities, this is some of the factual data here. And then, of course, we have some analytical data also. Trends by cities. We look at some of these, some of the increases. This is for Q2 of 2018. San Jose at 4.2%, Cleveland at 2.6%, San Francisco at 2.3%, and Boston, the flagship, at 2.1%. Seattle and LA are tied at 2%, and the Empire State, New York, at 1.8%. Where this broadcast originates. Charlotte at 1.7%, Chicago at 1.7%. You get the temps in here, right? St. Louis at 1.6%. You can see where this is going. And number 11 tie here, city of Minneapolis and Washington, D.C. at 1.5% each. And another tie, well, San Diego at 1.4%, Atlanta at 1.3%. We won't do all of these. We just sort of spotlight some. Pittsburgh at 1.2%, Nashville at 1%, and then we sort of go down here. Dallas at 0.8%, Houston at 0.7%, Baltimore at 0.6%, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, at 0.3%, and Tampa at 2%, Austin, Texas, 0.0%, Milwaukee also 0.0%, and a negative 0.2%. For Orlando in Florida, all the Florida cities are down there. This is what you get. This is Q2 of 2018. And if we look at by industry, we'll just look at, say, healthcare, for instance, one of the interesting things. We've not done this before, but We'll look at it, healthcare growth in Q2 of 2018 at a negative 0.7%, and year over year at 0.8%, and from 2006 at 13.1%, a little better than some. Let's skip to the Department of Labor here and their report called The Employment Situation. We've given this many, many times, July 2018. Non-farm employment, I'm not sure why we still use that term. 157,000 in July. Unemployment rate edged down to 3.9. It's been at 3.9 before. Employment in professional and business services, in manufacturing and healthcare. This is a household survey. The unemployment rate edged down 0.1 percentage point to 3.9, following an increase in June. And this is sort of going back and forth. There was a picture of Paul Krugman, the economist, that writes in the New York Times, on a roller coaster with Steve, the talk show host. I think he does the NBC, what is it, Tonight Show, maybe something like that. Colbert. Anyway, the idea of the economy going up and down. We have here at Cranston Analytics a seesaw model, basically the same thing. Nonetheless, the number of unemployed persons declined by 284,000 to 6.3 million in July. Both measures were down over the year by 0.4%, and 676,000 respectively. Another amongst major working groups, unemployment rates for adult men at 3.4%. Europeans are also at 3.4%. Declined in July. The jobless rate for adult women at 3.7%, slightly higher. Teenagers a little lower than what it has been at 3.1%. For African Americans at 6.6%, that is definitely a decrease from double digits. For Asians, 1%. Latinos or Hispanics, 4.5%. That seems like a rise there. Showed little or no change over the month. The household survey, we're still going good. Anyway, amongst the unemployed, the number of re-entries to the labor market decreased by 287,000 in July to 1.8 million, following an increase in June. Re-entries are persons who previously worked but are not in the workforce prior to their job search. The number of long-term unemployed, that's 27 weeks or more, was essentially unchanged at 1.4 million, accounting for 22.7% of the unemployed there. The workforce participation rate at 62.9 in July was unchanged over the month and over the year. So we have that 62.9%, almost 63%. The employment ratio, population ratio at 60.5 was a little change in July, but has increased 0.3% over the year. That's the participation rate. The number of persons employed part-time for economic reasons was little changed in July at 4.6 million, and it was down 669,000 over the year. These individuals would have preferred, of course, full-time work. The marginally attached, it's an interesting concept. Little difference from year over year there with the marginally attached. Discouraged workers, 512,000. That's amongst the so-called marginally attached. A nice way of saying it, that they are standing on the sidelines. Workers, discouraged workers are workers currently looking for work, but they believe there is no work. That's a half million people there. A remaining 1 million persons marginally attached to the workforce have not done a search. So there are a lot of people still out there looking for work. The other survey, the establishment survey, non-farm payroll employment, increased to 157,000 compared with an average, and this is one of the over 12 months, so we look at this, 203,000 over the prior 12 months. In July, gains in professional and business services, in manufacturing, healthcare, and social assistance. Employment in professional and business service increased by 51,000 and has risen over 518,000 over the year. Over the month, employment edged up in temporary help at 28,000. Computer design and related services at 8,000. 37,000 manufacturing jobs in July, with most of the gain in durable goods components. Employment rose in transportation equipment at 13,000, machinery at 6,000, electronic instruments at 2,000. Over the past 12 months, manufacturing has created 327,000 jobs. Employment in healthcare, and what they now have, social assistance, rose by 34,000. Healthcare employment continues to trend up over the month at 17,000, and has increased 286,000 over the year. Hospitals added 7,000 over the month, with social assistance, individual and family service adding 16,000 and 77,000 over the year. Employment in food services, drinking places continue to trend up, 26,000 there, and over 203,000 jobs in that sector. Construction continues to trend up, 19,000 has increased, 308,000 over the year. Retail trade hit very, very hard. Let's see. Little changed at 7,000. Remember, Toys R Us lost 30,000 people. Gains occurred in general merchandising, 14,000 there. Clothing and clothing accessories at 10,000. Food and beverage stores at 8,000. They were offset by a decline of 32,000 in sporting goods, hobby, book, and music stores, reflecting job losses in hobby and game stores. Employment showed little, no change over the month in major industries, mining, wholesale, and mining was up at one time. Transportation, warehousing, information, financial activities, and government. The average work week for all workers decreased by 1/10 to 34.5 in July, following an increase of 1/10 in June. In manufacturing, both the work week and overtime were unchanged at 40 plus 9/10 hour and 3.5 hours respectively. The average work week for production workers remained at 33.8%. The average hourly earning for all workers in private employment, we won't talk about farm employment, that's a carryover from, it was 7 cents to $27.05. Over the year, earnings have increased 71%, or 2.7%. The average hourly earning private sector production workers increased by 3 cents in July to $22.65. The change in non-farm employment, we just say employment, in May was revised up from 244,000 to 268,000. Change for June was revised to 240,000. These revisions, employment was at 59,000 more. You're going to find that, and you'll find more revisions coming out there. Preliminary benchmark revisions to the establishment survey will be released on August the 22nd. So we have more things coming up here. We will append this particular item here, and employment status in July for civilian non-institutional population at 843. The civilian workforce at 162,245. The participation rate we've always talked about, it's been at 62.9%. In May it was at 62.7%, and last year it was also at 62.9% in July. So the employment population ratio has basically been about the same as 1/10 point. It went up there, so not much difference there. These are looking at the crosstabs. And for some of the groups here, adult men 20 years and older, at 3.9, we've already given that. And last year it was at 3.4. And if we look at Europeans, it was 3.7 last year, and it is 3.4 in July of this year. For African Americans, it was 7.4. So it has been going down. That was in 2017. It's 6.6 now. And with 25 years or older, less than a high school diploma, it's at 3.2. That's the in high school graduates, no college. At 5.1, it was 7% in 2017. Some college, etc., at 3.2. It gets a little better here, and it was at 3.7 last year. For bachelor's degrees, 2.3. Now it's 2.2. Not much change there. Crosstabs here. Persons not in the labor force, marginally attached. About 1,209,000. It was last year, and now it's 1,498,000. Discouraged workers, roughly 500,000 there. It was 500,000 last year. So nothing has changed there. Duration of unemployment less than 5 weeks. Essentially 2 million now. It's 2,009,000. A little change there. 27 weeks and over, roughly at 1,757,000. That was last year. Now it's at 1,434,000. 435, a negative 43. So, in other words, these are the crosstabs. We'll just attach this, and we'll move back to headline presentations. Incidentally, these are from Reuters, from Bloomberg, from the BBC. We're all over the place on this information. And in terms of commentary here, this is, I believe, from the BBC. The headline here is U.S. growth slows more than expected. Well, it was expected. The summer months themselves are very, very precarious. Usually in July, we begin the summer holiday or vacation season in the U.S., so thus a lot of people are missing. In August being the premier day there also. And traditionally it used to be factory retooling time, and a time that dog days of summer they call it, so you don't usually have much activity. And then you go into September. Traditionally it used to be back to school. It's not as much anymore. That was in the retailing sector. The 2019 automobile models come out in September. Some are already out now. And where that will go, home building. We don't have that factor here, but it has been slowed. The number of houses available, number of houses that can be constructed, land use, and number of expertise out here, period. A consensus among economists at 190,000. Well, that's around the 220 model. Summers are usually a little bit lower than that. The unemployment rate, of course, fell back to 3.9 there, near the 18 low reached in May. I think it was 3.8 there. Manufacturing led the gain. That's interesting, but manufacturing in itself is not the manufacturing of the 80s and even in the 90s. Wage scales are differently. Many of the industries, the unionized industries, have two-tier scales going on. Tight labor market also made it harder for employers to fill positions. There are 6.6 million unfilled jobs across the U.S. Department of Labor says, we already went through that. An analysis here, this is Paul Burke, U.S. business correspondent. It's too early to tell if this dip is evident, but the trade wars. And the thing with the trade wars, they factor in, normally you would look at a trade war and you would say that it's 3 to 6 months out, but things move much, much more quickly now, particularly with China taking in preemptive strikes, as in liquefied gas. They started not receiving liquefied gas 3 months ago in anticipation of this. So you have an anticipatory situation, and at the same time, Apple reaches a $1 trillion mark. This is more for promotion of the market than anything else. There are a number of corporations that will hit the so-called magic $1 trillion mark, but those corporations are overvalued, period, and we'll see where they go. Interest rates there, well, this is from Ivan Stephenson, chief economist at Papillon Economics, said the data was better than it looked. At the core, roughly 200,000. That's a 3-month running average. Some people look at the 3-month running average and wherever they want to go. We'll just do this while we're here. The central bank, no Brexit deal. This is in the UK. Risks uncomfortably high. This is from Dr. Mark Carney, who used to be the head of the bank in Canada. Said the prospects of the UK leaving the EU without a deal was relatively unlikely possibility, but a possibility, no doubt about that. Been some political machinations there. We make sure that the banks have the capital and liquidity they need, and we have the contingency plans in place, he told the BBC. He said if no deal were to happen, it would mean disruption to trade and economic activity. The currency, the pound, falling below the $1.30 level. So an analysis here by Simon Jack. The governor of the Bank of England doesn't say anything by mistake, like all central bank chiefs. He knows his every utterance is subject to minute scrutiny. So his warning appears to be a deliberate intervention in a critical moment in the Brexit negotiations from a governor who considers it part of his job to highlight risks to the financial system and the wider economy. Others consider him too political by half, and previous statements were labeled beneath the dignity of the Bank of England. And heard that one before. Project fear, critics around the governor. Anyway, this is more of a British matter. We won't really go into it, but we'll finish this up. Catherine, professor of UK law at Cambridge, Barnard, said Duncan Smith's idea of falling back on WTO rules would not work because in that case the UK would not be allowed to let EU goods in tariff-free without extending it to the rest of the world. So there are all sorts of little band-aid approaches there. They have also raised the interest rate while we are with the UK. Rose 0.25% from 0.5% to 7%. 0.5%. So that is their raise of their interest rates. Now we'll skip over to Bloomberg. You know, it's just a little out of here, but these economies are so tied together, particularly the tariff regime. This is by Matthew Bosler, writing in the Bloomberg. The makers of Clorox, they are in Oakland, California, and this is echoed by other businesses, that the shipping costs that's now roughly at 10 to 12% will moderate. And the reason for the moderation is that many of these manufacturers are shipping less or trying to figure out more economic ways to do it. Incidentally, Berkshire Hathaway, the profits were up on the Burlington Northern rail line, the Geico insurance unit, and various other units of Berkshire. And they also managed to save roughly about 9%, a little over 9%, in their income tax particular situation. We have time. We'll just summarize that from Berkshire Hathaway. So the idea here, and this was from a Dozier, Bino Dozier. Anyway, this is Clorox, mid to high single edge there. This is shipping cost. Very, very important. Automation coming to fast foods. Now, this is kind of interesting here with increased automation. Fast casual burgers chain Shake Shack, never heard of them. But anyway, nonetheless, they are moving in to put in a more automated kiosk. In a lot of places, Mickey D's has those in also. We're going to do some, and in our newer markets have higher labor costs, such as the Bay Area in Seattle. It's always interesting when the kiosks come in. You have those in grocery stores and various other locations. Some people, they call it self-checking. They even have it in libraries. Self-checking is there, but as long as you have humans in the mix, more people usually will go to the humans and do their checking out, as one would say. But there's also checking in. Food markets now offer online ordering, and for a modest fee, they will select your purchases and deliver them to you. You do not need to ever approach the market. Now, some people go to the market, particularly on things like produce, because they want to look at the produce and maybe a little on the meat situation. But when you're talking about things that are on the shelf, it doesn't matter that much. And, of course, you have other competition there. Freight rates have gone up 10-12%. We already talked about that one. That is from Eagle Materials, their chief financial officer there. They're in Dallas, Texas. Operation Kitchen Sink. This is from another company, heavy vehicle, Oshkosh Corporation, and Wilson Jones, CEO there. Access to skilled labor is going to be one of our biggest issues. They're trying a lot of different things to do work-to-school programs, 4 hours of high school, then they go into the business to try to learn a skill there, and various other things out there. Medical staffing company CEO here, Susan Salker, AMN. That's one of the many services out there. We're not hearing anything unusual of the sort. Your typical 2%, 3%, and 4%. If it is happening, it's probably one-off. We're hearing of these lucrative. This is a new deal here. The military used it in the Gulf War. Upfront bonuses, the same thing, but it was worth more money back then, of say $20,000. And many times the requirement isn't more than 1 or maybe 2 years, but they're lucky to get the 1 or 2 year person. That way they don't have to worry about salary increases. Now, when you start talking about working conditions, that would obviously fall upon if they are unionized or not unionized. If they're not unionized, the bonus taken, but the labor situation is totally different. Let me just move on here. This is more Bloomberg here. U.S. job engines keep humming. Well, and we talked about wage pickups stay elusive, period. Employers add workers to steady pace, and we won't go back into that, but their study on spectacular growth, while the employment rate slips back below 4%, never lower since 1969. Well, it's not 1969 now. Treasury yield, dollar yields move lower as in the pound. Suggests growth is softening in quarter Q2. Fastest expansion since 2014, a new reference point. There are hints of a concern about the trade wars may be filtering into the data more than fluttering. But so far, overwhelmingly, people are just shrugging it off. Water on the proverbial duck's back, I think is the old adage. Software payroll figures may partially stem. This is towards about 33,000, no doubt about it. And there's a lot of more out there that are smaller, less than 100, that are going out. Goods producing jobs continue to add workers at a robust clip. The manufacturing sector increased 37,000, but that's offset by basically what happened at Toys R Us. The most since December, exceeding projections of 25,000. But yet we looked at that at paycheck.com. Shows, anyway, we won't get in much into that. It's a very study as she goes for the labor market. Stephen Stanley's an economist at Amherst, P-Point Securities. Trade uncertainty. Well, the trade war keeps digging in, period. More from Bloomberg. A central bank takes the spotlight as economic anxiety lingers. Decision time. Smorgasbord of central bank decisions this week were largely delivered as expected. The Reserve Bank of India. We go a little international here. Tightening of the cycle. The Fed. With a hint to September with the Fed. And Brazil left its benchmark rate at 6.5%. That's to lure in customers. More central bank musings. Higher inflation along with weak growth makes things more complicated. That's for the EU Central Bank. The People's Bank of China is said to be more flexible on loan quotes and cooling economy. The Swedish economy is heating up, allowing Riksbank some room to consider tightening before the end of the year. Russia is thinking in the opposite direction, staying open to the possibility of another rate cut. And it's probably needed. Back to square one, Turkey has inflation does rate hikes. Different situations in different places. Higher tariffs on Chinese goods. At the same time, it aims no restart of the talks. China is taking a prudent situation here. On Friday, China retaliated by a list of $60 billion. Tyson Foods, the food conglomerate out of Arkansas, was amongst those blaming the trade wars for slash in 2018 profits. Factories over the world are holding back on orders, and U.S. manufacturers are considering production sites abroad. South Korea has braved a little easier rebound. Exports backed by a solid semiconductor demand. So far, so good. Building urgency to notch in the British deal. May's holiday shortened. while UK leaders hold out hope for the Labour Party support for their Brexit plan. On to New Zealand, consumer unrest. New Zealand workers took to the streets. About a decade-long limp wage growth. Neighboring Australia is dealing with bubbling frustration over its Aussie per-minute population boom. And China is trying to quell protests and social expectations of hundreds of thousands of faulty vaccines given to children. And this is one of the big problems here. And a lot of readings here. We'll get to those later. This is a repatriation of capital. We won't go into this. Is from Reuters. A few companies that moved ashore in a wave of inversion deals are considering returning to the U.S. According to some attorneys, they have ascended to return, but a handful of clients have asked about domestication, which involves buying a U.S. headquartered company. Well, they can buy a company much easier than not. That way you don't have to build a headquarters, etc. Publicly shaming corporations that move plants is part of the Trump strategy. More than 60 U.S. companies have inverted, including the medical manufacturer Medtronic. There were wave of deals in 2012, 2014, but inversions largely ended in 2015 after regulatory crackdown under President Barack Obama. Pfizer walked away from a $160 billion merger with an Irish company. So you'll see some of this going on continuously here, moving around. Yeah. We talked about Apple. We won't spend any time on it. And a trade war, tit for tat. Well, tit for tat continues on, and we'll see where tit for tat goes. We'll have China has so far shown a little sign of backing down, and that is a prudent position for China not to back down in this so-called trade war. They have the resources due to their planned economy to ride the wave out. Now, when you talk about companies like Tyson, as their profit margins drop, they will also start to either move plants and cut production in the U.S. And once this cycle starts, it's difficult to stop it. So what we are seeing, as George H.W. Bush, former president, said, a new economic order. That's what he called it. In the late 1990s. But you're seeing here some things happening with the intentional consequences or unintentional consequences. Most economists would argue they're not, going back to the Haley Smoot tariffs that historians said brought a depression on. But it was a different economy in the 30s than now. You have a globalized economy. And this has been the problem with the Trump administration. They were really never set up to deal with a globalized economy. They have a nationalist standpoint, a national economy, which in itself is not a negative thing if you do not plan to be in a globalized economy, or you are not as exposed to a globalized economy. But the problem is with industrial capitalism, going back to Karl Marx, you have to continually find markets. And for many of these companies, they've saturated the U.S. Market. There are not any buyers here. The demographics in the U.S. for things like motor scooters, etc., an aging population, not as many. So Harley Davidson out of Milwaukee had to move to other markets, period. And the automobile industry is sort of being upended as we move more and more to electronic cars and autonomous or self-driving cars. Electronic cars don't have engines in them, and that reshapes the production cycle in Detroit, in many other places. So we're seeing that just as the kiosks in the burger joints. Now let's move on here. I guess we'll do the numbers now. I will start with stocks and we'll go to commodities. This is from Bloomberg. We need to find better methods of doing things, but we will over the time. We'll start in the Pacific area. The Nikkei at 12 plus 6.5. The Hang Seng was down 38.24. And the CSI index was also down 55.68. And we'll go to the European sector here. Eurostock at 13.19. The DAC at 69.43. In France, they were at 18. In Spain, at 41.60. And to New York, the Dow was at 136.42. The Nasdaq Composite 9.33. And on to the commodities. Bloomberg Commodity Index at 0.82. The UBS Bloomberg was at 5.16. The Reuters Jeffers we've started including at 0.61. The Reuters International at 6.67. Here, and we'll go to energy. Brent crude down 24 cents at $73.21. West Texas crude was down 47 cents at $68.49. TB picking and jumping for joy even in his retirement. Gasoline was down 25 cents. Natural gas up 4 cents. And home heating, don't talk much about it, was down 49 cents. Precious metals. Gold on the Comdex was up $3.10 at $1,223.20. On the spot, it was up $7.07. I'm not sure why that happened. At $1,214.90. Silver was up 8 cents. It's been resting at $15.46. Copper was up $2 and $2. I don't know why they put this in green here. Not very good. They didn't design to do what we're doing. Anyway, platinum on the spot was up $7.29. And we start looking at various things. Cotton was up $3. I don't know why we're looking at cotton. Wheat was down $3. And cocoa was down $24. And cotton was down 71 cents. Live cattle was up $2. I don't know about pork bellies. I don't have to go outside the box and find pork bellies and see where we are with pork bellies. I'm not sure. We'll look at gas prices. I think it's Gas Buddies is the name of that website. We won't spend as much time there as we do sometimes. Gas Buddy, I guess. Well, anyway. We'll start out in the northeast sector. $3.19 in Boston. Is it a mobile station? I don't know what's it, Shell. $3.31. You can see about where this is in Boston. I will say to the west coast, California. We'll skip over. In California, the lowest price, Costco in Turlock, that's Southern California. $2.99. A little cheaper than on the East Coast. Not sure why. Northern California. Gas in shop, $3.46. Armco, $3.49. It's basically about $3.49 out there. Is we move along. Let me see what else. We'll go back down to we'll do LA County, then we'll switch completely here. Usually have this. We'll go to Los Angeles while we're out here. Not bad. $3.25. At Armco, it's $3.30. So they have lower prices there. We'll go over to Texas, the land of petroleum. Phillips 66, $3.35. $2.35. Excuse me. Conoco, $2.36. This is gas prices in. I'm not sure where that is. We'll hit a little higher in Dallas, $2.44 at Costco. At 7-Eleven, a lot of 7-Elevens there, $2.46. We'll call that the benchmark. There, and we'll go to Florida here. I know we're a little addicted to doing this. I guess we just like to push things. Let's see what we get. Bradenton, Jordan. Florida. Jacksonville, $2.49. It's in the twos, basically, most places. In Florida, this is a lot of Jacksonville coming up here. We'll go to Miami. $2.65, not bad. I guess old H is having a good time there. Chevron, $2.69. Doing a lot better there than in the Commonwealth for sure. That depends. Down in Quincy, $2.73 there. Not sure. Braintree, $2.93. That's the Citgo. And, you go around here. You're in the $2 and... there's one. That's in Quincy. $2.87. And it's Speedway, $2.95. So it's that's the East Coast. We'll see, where these going here. Let me see. Neighborhood in Roxbury. We might as well do it while we're doing something. $3.05. More expensive. That's the Blue Hill Avenue and Moreland Street, Roxbury in Boston. Anyway, this will do it for us. The week that was on the 4th of August, 2018, coming to you on WBRN Radio and the Bostonred Network. We're on the iHeart app. We're on Stitcher. We're on YouTube. And various other apps around. iHeart has over 800 stations. You can find us there as Numbers Man. Our Twitter feed is also Numbers Man, and our Facebook page is Cranston Analytics, our partner in this venture, as one would say. The old seesaw model is seesawing, and that is all we can say. For those in business, make it a productive next week. For the consumer, obviously, the eye is on the prize. Lower shipping costs as a demand. We'll see how that